Welcome to the Practice Leader Podcast, brought to you by Ascent, a show for medical practice administrators who feel stuck in the daily chaos and want to lead with intention. I'm Zed Williamson, founder and CEO of Physician Growth Accelerator.
And I'm Paul Richards, president of Ascent and director of otolaryngology at the University of Utah School of Medicine. Every week, we explore what high-performing leaders are doing in real time, so you can stop reacting and start leading with purpose, strategy, and results.
So every business has employees, and every employee is of an age. And as we move through these years, what ends up happening is we have different employees of different ages, which also means different employees, different generations. For instance, in medical practice today, it would be very easy for you to have employees who are Gen X, older than 46 or so, employees that are millennials, so that 30 to 45 range, and even Generation Z or Gen Z, which are teenagers leading up to about 29 years old. So this is affecting all of us, and it matters. So we're going to chat about it. So Paul, you work with a team. There's different ages. You obviously have people that you're connected with across the country. This comes up, this kind of different in how people view work, how people view how they spend their time at work, productivity, basically everything.
Yeah, this thought occurred to me just kind of as I've been talking to people and looking at kind of what are your hours work expectations. So very often we have a productivity expectation for our doctors. In academics, we use work RVUs. A lot of private practice just use straight dollars, just payments and things. And I've been kind of hearing more about these reports of like time spent in clinic or hours in the clinic. And it's been interesting and kind of made me think and made me a little worried or just what does this mean? And we've taken a little bit of a deeper dive and we've looked at some stuff with some of my colleagues across the country, and we're seeing, just very variable hours that physicians are working, and it may be, it's very different between academics and a hospital setting or a private practice where you've got to be really, watching your bills. But I've just seen where, when I started this 10 years ago, when I started working in ENT 10 years ago, and when I started working in medical practice 16 years ago, it seemed like people would work right up till 5:30. And that's when they would come and talk to me in the office, right when I was trying to go home and want to come talk after they'd seen all their patients. And now I'm just kind of seeing things shift a little bit where the work's getting done a little earlier in some cases, not all cases, not every situation, but some of the physicians are getting done a little sooner, or there's just maybe later starts to the day, and mornings are valuable for personal time or what. And it just makes me wonder, is there a shift? And so I kind of looked at it and been looking at my dynamic of my doctors, and this even applies to just even some of the employees in the office and in the clinics, but we have definitely shifted from kind of the Gen X to the millennials and the Gen Zs. And I don't know if I'm ready, or if I know enough of how to accommodate this or be prepared for some of the things are happening. So,
Yeah, no, it's a big deal. If you think about it, work culture, every generation in history will always at some point say something like, kids today, and, they have that belief about the younger generations. The generation above us has had it about us, and you can hear it in our generations about people younger. And there is no right or wrong. But what happens is when we have these gaps, so you have someone who's a Gen Xer, let's say early 50s, and they're witnessing the behavior and the values of someone who's 26. Those two people view work culture differently. it was kind of interesting. I have a close friend who has family in Italy, and they sent over their 21-year-old son to spend a month here, and we're just outside of New Orleans, Louisiana, and he was blown away by the incredible pace that life was in this area. And then they visited New York. Well, New York compared to Louisiana is absolutely insane. And if that same person, if someone was in New York, they might go to Japan, and the work culture in Japan would blow them away because, these things are all different. There's no right or wrong. But when we have these shifts, like you called it, and we're not aware of it, we can actually assign blame to someone. And that's rarely helpful. So it's good to kind of understand. And like you said, how do we get ready for this? One interesting thing, if you're dealing with people on the younger side, what generically is very important is that they believe the work they do matters. And that is really above everything else. You will come across scenarios where this person wants a promotion and they're more interested in the title than the pay. They want feedback that the work they do matters. Silence to them is bad. And this is kind of a scenario like for me, like I don't need a pat on the back. You don't need to come tell me that I did a good job. I don't mind it, but it's not a thing that I wonder about. Other generations, it absolutely is. And so if you're silent, they could actually start looking for another job because they're assuming they're not doing a good job because you haven't told them they've done a good job. I mean, it's just one little nuance of things. I'm curious if you've witnessed anything with either team members internally or uh, people you've talked with Ascent.
Yeah, so that's to my point earlier. Like if I'm starting to kind of pay attention more to these generational differences, and I've heard a lot of different things. Gen this does this, and when this generation goes into a doctor's appointment, they ask for these things. This generation goes in, they're already telling the doctor what they have. The younger generation goes in saying, "This is the drugs I want, and this is the treatment, and this is what AI says," and right. And so I've been paying attention to this, but I'm finding it that I really need to understand it, just for that exact reason. I've got employees that they just need to meet just to talk and just hear from me. And it's like, I could even tell them something bad, like you're not doing this right, and they appreciate that more than just not meeting. They want any kind of critique or any kind of compliment. They just want that connection. It's been interesting. So what I'm realizing is I've got to be prepared, and as a leader, anybody should really be kind of learning these things. Specifically the kind of hospital kind of clinic time in my world. We have a block time. You kind of have like from 8 to noon, then they have a lunch break, and then it's 1 to 5. Those are the work blocks. I'm sure it's pretty similar in private practice. Some give and take, some flexibility here and there, but what I'm noticing is it's hard for people to get to work and start at 8 o'clock for some of these different generations, or and I think some of that stuff can creep into other generations too, if it seems
Absolutely.
out of fairness, or like, well, so and so's doing this now, or they want this, um, and then so I'm seeing the line of 8 o'clock getting blurred a little bit, and then I'm seeing the end of the day getting blurred a little bit, and when is the last patient, and they need time to sign notes, or and some people probably really hear what I'm saying and are like, yeah, that's going on in our institution. Others are like, we got to pay the bills. We don't let them do that, even if they want to. But outside of healthcare and just normal jobs, like not normal jobs, you know what I'm saying? Like just other
Yeah.
jobs. I mean, the hours are flexible. They're working from home. They're in their jeans, like they're taking breaks to go mow the lawn between, things, and that stuff's reciprocating into the healthcare world. People know that their friends are doing that, and they're working like dogs, and like it's boiling over, and what I'm seeing is a total shift of people don't just crank it like they used to. Some still do, of course, and they can get compensated for that, of course. but I'm just seeing people that are like, you know what, I'm good. I'm good at 4:30. I'm good. 3:30. Let me then note for a little bit. I'll be out by 4. I got to go pick up my kids.
Yep.
Right.
Well, so what's interesting is it is a self-feeding cycle. So as leaders and as organizations, if we create a scenario where different things are allowed, and it's not being punitive, but it's, if we don't talk about it and someone shows up at 8:30, no one says anything, and then 8:45, no one says anything, we're actually telling that person, hey, that's cool. So we might accidentally start it there. The other thing is, if they don't believe it's important for them to be there, that's what drives that person. Because I forget the exact term you used, and I wish I remember, but it basically, you don't see as many people who just get after it, and you can get these generations to absolutely get after it. They just need to believe how big of a deal that is.
Yeah.
And it's the person will show up at 8 if they believe that 8 a.m. is important. But the second they can believe 8 a.m. is not important, then why would I show up at 8? I mean,
Yeah.
and then so if we're not communicative about that, so we're actually proving to them that 8 a.m. isn't important, or we're punitive, but we haven't justified the reason, because that's the other way to prove that they're right is, gosh darn it, it's 8 a.m. because I said so. Well, I don't have any patience, but it's 8 a.m. because I said so. Well, I've just proven to them from their perspective that they're right. This doesn't matter. So now they're upset, and they're looking at the people who are taking a break mowing their lawn as lucky individuals. So it's this kind of self-feeding scenario where we can have people in leadership who are not naturally overly communicative because of that generation, and a generation that absolutely needs it. I mean, think about this. If you're 29 years old, your entire life, you have experienced the internet and social media. And even like the idea of video games, for that generation, you are connected to people anywhere in the world through a headset. You do a thing and your feedback is 100% immediate. And you're collaborating with people all over the world about achieving this thing on a game, and you get on a headset and you're focused, collaborating, immediate feedback. And then you're texting, social media, immediate feedback. And then you go to work and no one gives you any feedback.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Man, you get likes, right? You post a picture, you get likes. I remember I'm not active on Instagram. I was at a point where I would post, and then I noticed this thing about me where I was like checking to see who
Yeah.
liked my posts, who
Mm.
commented on my posts. And I was like, it took me a little while, but I realized, I'm like, why am I what's happening to me? I've changed. And I'm kind of on the cusp of Gen let's see, millennial and Gen
X.
I think. So that's why I'm like crossing both realms. I was like, what is going on with me that I'm checking my phone for likes. This is weird, this is bizarre. So I got off of all that stuff, and it's just showing my generation. But let me throw a wrench in what you're saying. Like I know when you're in a clinical environment, you kind of have to have the time in the clinic to generate the business. But what I'm seeing, I think what I'm seeing is um people that aren't in a like that kind of a model, what kind of business model it is, where you have to be there to kind of like get the patients in, or the customers in, or however you see it, if you're working retail or something. But those that don't have that and kind of work from home, have some flexibility, they'll always say like, oh, I'm so much more productive now that I'm home and I don't have the distractions of the office, and I'm healthier than ever. I'm working out. I have this morning block. I can go out and take a walk in the sunshine during the day. And they're like, hey, I'm working, like 6 hours, but I'm getting more done in 6 than I did in 8. I think you've heard what I'm saying, like, and I don't know the studies and stuff, but I think some of that rubs off on people that are kind of chained to a clinical block or a retail block or something, and they want that too, to some degree. Even if you're like a medical assistant or a nurse or someone that's like, kind of in the office that has to be there, you hear that, you see that, you've got a sister-in-law or a neighbor whose garden's perfect because they're always out tinkering the yard when they're working from home, you know?
Yep. Well, it's really interesting because first of all, our brains, we are all really good at finding the proof to justify what we like or don't like. So the working at home person is going to be really good at proving how
Yeah.
effective
Yeah.
that is. And the person who wishes they were working at home would be really good at proving why it would be better if they were at home. Um, so you
You're saying they're
have
both
that.
wrong. You're saying they're both right.
Yes. Well, everyone's right from their own perspective, right? But I believe long term, and this is getting a little bit into philosophy, but the work from home people are probably going to end up um, with a level of detriment because the community matters.
Mhm.
Interacting with other humans, it does matter. It's part of it is built into us for tens and tens of thousands of years. It's it's who we are, and the work at home crowd it could be a little tough. If you go into some interesting studies from when COVID happened and everyone was forced home, different personality types, it hit first where they were like, I got to get out of here. I I can't be by myself, you know. Um, and it's just those people notice it sooner. But it's something we always battle in business and leadership is because people are always looking at the grass is always greener. And one trick is if you're worried about productivity or you're worried about someone not utilizing the time in the best fashion, they probably don't recognize it. They are finding the justification for that, and all it can take is a debrief. And if you think about a debrief, what we're doing is we're talking about a past period of time and discussing what went well on purpose, what went well on accident, what didn't go well because we did something on purpose, and what didn't go well on accident. And if we could go back and change anything about last week, what would it be? And then what did we believe about last week before it started that we realized was wrong? And what you'll end up finding is, let's say you have a team member who they consider themselves busy and you consider them not busy. And let's say the business functionality of their productivity is also saying they're not busy, meaning the numbers don't work. That's how you get that person to shift is do a debrief. You do that a few weeks in a row and you start recognizing that they are portraying a future picture of tomorrow's history. I know that sounds weird, but that's how our brains work is we have an opinion about what the history of tomorrow will be in advance, which then creates an emotional response. And we say things like, I'm just so busy, I got to make sure I don't come in before 9 and I got to be home by 3. And then next week, when you talk about last week, the person will go like, actually, I probably could have seen X number more patients or anything. So something like that. It might be interesting to try if people are running into something.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
And the generation thing, it's here to stay. There's really potential great employees in all these generations. There's no a certain generation can't be a good employee. And you hear that sometimes. If you get around a bunch of business leaders, whether it's healthcare or any business, sometimes you will hear like, you can't find anybody good who's a Gen Z. They don't want to work. And it's really not true. It's just understanding what's important to them and can you provide it? And I don't mean hand holding. Quite the opposite is can you create an environment where they can hold themselves accountable because they believe in the mission? And that's one thing that healthcare probably has over any other business is the work really matters. And there are companies out there who've done such a good job at making their team feel like the work matters. And it's a space like a shoe or a tape company. And I think sometimes healthcare misses how powerful the story is. And it doesn't get shared enough with the team that everything they do is literally affecting the health of our fellow humans. And there's so much power in that, reel
Yeah.
that in and use it.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, like being in a clinical environment is a place where there can be instant kind of feedback and uplifting and likes, as we are saying
Mhm.
here, where and that really comes from the provider. The provider has that power to make them feel part of the team, that they're also providing the care for the team. They're part of the treatment. And I agree, that's a great way to healthcare is a great place for Gen Z for that very reason. And I think as a leader, kind of to what we open up with is, know your generations, know where you are, who you are, and how you can kind of adapt and learn to work with those different groups is very important.
Couldn't say any better. That's great. Well, I hope you enjoyed this topic. If you're ever curious about talking about things and you want to suggest topics to our show, you can do so at practiceleaderpodcast.com. And we'll see you next time on the Practice Leader Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Practice Leader Podcast. If you're feeling the weight of challenges in your practice, know this: the problems you're struggling with today don't have to remain problems. There is a path forward, and you're not walking it alone.
Each week, we'll be here with insights, ideas, and real-world conversations to help you move forward from chaos to clarity.
See you next week.